And then I'll say welcome officially to some of my favorite people who are here today. My name is Blake Cohn. I am the Executive Director of the National Network of Schools in Partnership. I'm so excited to be here to share some of our member schools and their quick tips and advice. This is meant to be just easy takeaways. We started this, I think Annie actually might have been one of the first ones to do a video about this at the beginning of the pandemic, where she told us about community impact, social impact bingo. I can't remember what the title of it was, but anyway, these are just informal ways to share ideas and ways to make our work a little bit easier and more effective. So I'm going to turn it over to Laura. Laura Day from Hockaday School, who also happens to be our senior program consultant at NNSP. So Laura, thank you for coordinating today for us.
Yes, hello everyone. Those of you on the video and those of you who've joined us live. This is like the busiest time of schools. It's school year. If anybody else feels like that, there's a night event every night for the next 2 months. So that's exciting. But here we are today. So I thought this was the perfect month to give you basically all fun things served on a platter for you. So you can just like lay there and take it in and take what you want and not take what you want. So we have 3 different schools here that are going to be giving kind of their tips to all of you practitioners out there. I am quickly going to give a few tips because I just thought, why not throw a few out at you? So here are some things that I would suggest to make jobs easier. One, and some of them I've said before, some of them I haven't. One, follow every single nonprofit and human that does work in your city that you can get your hands on. So that way you are passively getting information about what's going on in your community. Parents are your secret weapon. I think they're an untapped resource. Try to get in front of them before they come talk to you. So I try to speak at every parent coffee I can. I try to get I have parent liaisons at every division level. I call them when I'm going to do something. I call them when I need help on something. Getting their buy-in and having them talk for you really quickly can change culture. When students come into your office, which all of you experience, and they have a great idea and they're going to go raise money, which is always the first thing they want to do. I have started, because I think there's been a gap with what's going on in COVID, having kids sit down and talk them through, how are we going to send this email? Why would they maybe not respond to the email? How do you send an email like that? Does it help if you actually go there? Have you talked to the organization to ask them what they need? So I used to just like kind of do something and send them off, but I think we need to back up and start teaching skills, because I think the last 2 years kids have learned that. The more kids can say things in front of people, the better than me. I get out of the way as much as humanly possible. Big kids telling little kids what you want to do, like secret, stealthy, like you're trying to move the school, have the big kids say it to the little kids, and it happens really fast. And my assistant director, I was like, what's the 5th one? And she was like, Laura, you know what you do every single day that you don't even know you do? Is I say the part of our mission that applies to the work that I do at least 11 to 15 times a day. I am always saying, wow, look at you. You're leading a life of purpose and impact. How great is that? Oh, way to lead a life of purpose. I can't stop myself, but kids say it now because I can't stop saying it. So those are my 5 quick tips. And I'm going to hand it off to Annie, who is also going to share some of her tips. Take it away, Annie.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura. It's so great to be with you all. I am out here in the South Bay. I work at Holbrook School, and I am the director of the Scott Center for Social Entrepreneurship in its 5th year. And one of my quick tips is something that I hope all of us will do together, which is to teach and use the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals as equity literacy. Independent schools love to design and create their own language and metrics. We have the United Nations, which let's all recognize is like a bigger and more comprehensive group of individuals that we can use this language cohesively. My previous research was in impact investing, where we researched the over 800 metrics that people were using to measure social impact. And the reason why it was taking so long to take off is because everyone had a different way of measuring it and talking about it. So I'm really excited that we have these 17 sustainable development goals that we can teach and use across all ages. I use them as young as junior kindergarten. And Thomas the Train has a great partnership with the SDGs. So if you're teaching littles, there's 4 sustainable development goals and really funny, great videos. So even our 4 and 5-year-olds say things like life below water, life on land, and they're building that equity literacy from a young age. To Laura's point, every single meeting that I had in my first 2 years of work was about a lemonade stand or a fundraiser. And we are moving away from that. So I have a framework now where you have to educate, integrate, create, and then donate. And you have to do those 4 things or those 3 things before the 4th of the donation. And it's really been a great tool for us to be able to pull back, see where the bigger picture fits in, make sure we're not asking families every week for a different kind of donation because donation fatigue is real. So that's been really fun. I've also started, thanks to my colleague Miki Tomita, who runs Impact Ed with me, we've started using a framework to teach finance using 8 types of capital. I'll put in the link after I'm done talking, a great resource. So it's either 8 or 10 types of capital, depending on the resource that you use, but it helps people understand finance in more than just money terms. Your social networks, your experiential networks, your knowledge networks, and a group of middle school girls actually started a club called WIFTY, which is Women in Finance and Tech Teaching Youth, and interviewed some awesome women leaders that are working at the intersection of technology and entrepreneurship, and then mapped their own 8 types of capital to their life. And so it's been a good way for us to pull away from the only way you can start something or change things is if you have money, but also recognize that money is a tool and comes with power and privilege. Ooh, what else? Okay, I love to teach the original definition of entrepreneurship, entrepreneur, which is a French term, and it means to undertake. So the US-centric definition is like always a business. And really, if you can pull it out and look at the original idea of entrepreneurship, the idea to undertake something. And our 2 questions that we ask anyone 4 to 104, we had our oldest member of Hillbrook School at our 8th grade play last night. And he is 102 years old. We ask everyone, what matters to you? What are you doing about it? I have it on postcards. It's the way I launch every class. Every kid has something that matters to them. The goal of our work at the center is to help them know what they can do about it. Early on in the years, people were like, well, what if they say something matters to them that's like really horrible? Never once has that happened to me. And if it does happen, what a great opening for a conversation with a student. Okay, let's see. My last one was, we are formally shifting our language around DEI. So we look at diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and action. And we had a really fun, somewhat heated conversation yesterday around like, why do we keep having to change language? Let's just choose something and be done with it. And my tip is to not get stuck in this idea that schools often do, which is like, we need a Google Doc and we need to be done with it. And I need to check the box and pack it up and put it away. Like, let your DEI and social impact work be a living document, and consider it this awesome thing when people come to you and they want to change your DEI statement and feel engaged with the work you're doing. And the justice and action, we've been able to combine the work of the social entrepreneurship piece with the DEI work by naming justice and action are critical parts of DEI work. And you actually cannot be doing social entrepreneurship well if you're not recognizing the DEI component. Those are my hot, fun tips, and happy to chat anymore with anyone that is using these and we can combine forces or want to know more.
Those are very hot, fun tips.
Annie, I was Googling Thomas the Tank Engine. I missed the 4 things that you do before fundraising.
Yes. Educate, integrate, create, and then donate.
Okay.
Awesome.
Ooh, I love a little rhymey scheme.
Yes. Annie, thank you. So good and so helpful. Really appreciate it. And the way we're going to structure this for all of you out there is we're going to have each school talk about their top 5, and then we'll leave a little time for questions at the end. And so Megan James is going to now share her top 5.
Hi, all. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being a part of the conversation. I'm Megan. I'm the director of the Glenn Institute for Philanthropy and Service Learning here at Westminster. We work first with students kindergarten through 12th grade. And I have the wonderful privilege of working with a great team and have Glenn team members in each of our divisions. So that's been a really interesting and exciting time to figure out as a team. And this is my first tip, it's going somewhere, is to communicate early and listen. Listening being the key of the communication to your team members, and understanding what's going on in each of the divisions if you do work cross-divisionally, and understanding sort of what's the temperature in each of the divisions, and where are each of the, what is the unique capabilities of the students and the faculty and the strengths of each of the divisions, and just spending time getting out of the office when you can, and away from behind your computer when you can, but actually putting a block in my schedule to get out of my own way and get myself into the classrooms and just have face time with the students and with our faculty and staff in each of the 3 divisions, and being really intentional about it. And the same way is, that communication and listening so often to our community partners, and starting conversations by just opening up and saying, how is it going? What's going on in your life? And, just listening and understanding how we can leverage all of our different capabilities at our divisions, and deepen our relationships rather than trying to go broader. And then my second one was, having regular team meetings with our Glenn Institute department to know how we can support each other and how we can build on each other's initiatives rather than trying to do it in isolation. How can we, just like Laura said, how can we get our older kids, our high schoolers who may be studying or doing some similar initiatives, even though the language might be different and the academic skills might be different, how could they then work with our lower school kids or our middle school students? And then how could sometimes we actually, we bring our middle school students up to the upper school, or our lower school students up to the upper school, which has been really exciting as well. One common language is really important. And the more that we can use common language, I think we see that theme going across the board, the better. We came up with a sort of an acronym this year as a team to look at how do we connect and engage with others through idea groups. So indirect, direct, education, and advocacy. And again, kind of what going to Annie was saying about moving beyond the traditional fundraiser, moving beyond that like single touch point, but how do our students use their own particular skills and strengths? And there are other ways to have deeper and richer impact if we can just stop and think and do our research and listen. And then also the extended definition of philanthropy, going beyond time, talent, and treasure to voice, advocacy, and network, and making sure our students understand that everybody can be a philanthropist, and that philanthropy comes from love of humankind. And that is the root of the word. And I guess, Annie, I loved hearing what you were saying, because I think we're mirroring exactly, some of the similar ideas, working really closely with our global programs people and our DEI folks. We're all working on empathy and cultural competence. We actually were able to put together a joint in-service day in February, where we focused on communities of conscience, and we all had a moment to talk about the work that we do. But then our faculty, we had about 45 different workshops that faculty offered to the rest of the staff faculty to say, here's what we're doing in our classroom, learn about what we're doing, low stakes, but really involved and engaged around that idea of that intersection between innovation, philanthropy, education, and DEI work. And then lastly, and I'm sure you all deal with this as well, as students are coming into your office with their ideas, you often find students have some of the same similar ideas, but they don't talk to each other. And so really working on how can we get students together and understanding that they can amplify their impact, that they don't have to create their own initiative, and working with the college counseling department as well, so that they are mirroring that language to say, like, you can tell a great story by how you used your own particular strengths, skills, and talents to help an already existing organization, or by partnering with another student rather than having to create your own initiative. And I think that was 5.
That's good. 5 great ones. And you finished strong, because I think we all feel that way. And that's really good advice. And thank you for doing that. And then lastly, Bridget and Maya are going to talk about their top 5.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. This is so great. I mean, I'm like, can't write fast enough, and I know it's being recorded, but it's just so inspirational and exciting to be together with people who are doing this work. I'm Bridget Collins. I'm from McDonough School in Owings Mills, Maryland, and I'm the director of Greatest Good McDonough, our signature social impact program. One of the things that you should know is this is our first year of doing this. And Maya and I are going to we're sharing 5. Don't worry, we don't each have 5. We're sharing 5, and we'll be going back and forth. But I wanted to say that we have a slightly, it's unique because this is our first year. So for those of you who are just starting out and getting your feet on the ground on this, a lot of ours are coming from the perspective of we're 9 months in, and this is what we've learned. Number one, largely due to the amazing advice from Laura Day and Blake and the work we did this summer. The very first thing is to get your language, your mission, your vision, your outcomes all together, and then craft an elevator pitch, whatever you'd like to say, right? A way to share it, and then share, strategize who you're going to share it with. Who are the major stakeholders that you need to share this information with right from the gate. So of course, we've gotten in front of the MPA, in front of the Board of Trustees, in front of our students, in front of our faculty, in all divisions, unique to each division, but the same language, the same pitch, and also be ready to tweak it. So as we started the pitch, we wrote it without any real examples of what we were actually, what was happening, boots on the ground. And Laura gave us great advice to just constantly keep stories, real stories. You know, stories are this beautiful data that you can share and that make it alive for people. And so that now, by the time we got to November, and December, like, we changed the pitch so much because we were telling real stories, and it made it so much more authentically ours. So that's really important. So communication, and we also crafted a 1-pager from that, and then got that 1-pager in the hand of all of the stakeholders who would be sharing the word, the admissions office, that anybody who picks up a phone and answers a question, because what we found was people didn't know what Greatest Good McDonough was, and the language around it. We were getting people coming to us that had nothing to do with social impact, because they didn't really, it's so vague, greatest good. I mean, what is good? Is it character? And it's all those things, but information is a really powerful, especially in the very beginning. To you, Maya, for number 2.
Everyone, thank you for having us. As Bridget said, I'm Maya Okonski, and I'm the program manager for Greatest Good McDonough. And we are at the beginning of our journey. We have learned a lot. So I would say our second tip would be quality over quantity. I think when you're coming out the gate, you just have so many great ideas, and you know how amazing this could be for all your students, but you really need to focus on who are your people already. Like, where are the divisions, the faculty members, the administrators that are already on your side, pulling for your program, and really trying to hone in on those groups. So really just going deep with those students. One of those groups for us were our lower school, because they are really doing this work throughout all of their grade levels. So really just finding ways to plug in deeply, doing amazing work with them, and not worrying so much about, distributing our knowledge or our passion throughout this school, right? Because we'll do the work really amazing with them, and they'll be, sharing the information with the rest of the school. So just finding a way to plug in intentionally with one group, and knowing that, you have time to kind of spread that throughout the institution. So quality over quantity. Bridge, do you want to do?
Sure. Next one, pace yourself and pace yourself. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And when it's a new program, you see all these other programs out there posting on social media, flourishing, come to these events and you hear all the amazing work that everyone's doing. And it's easy to start to feel discouraged that you're not getting as much done as you had hoped. And that goes back to what Maya was saying, that you really have to deepen the quality and not feel like you have to produce a tremendous amount of things, and that pacing is really important, and putting your best foot forward, and also understanding we understand what independent school means, and we are all so very different, and even within our independent school, every division is uniquely different, and the tone and the pace and what they've endured in the past 2 years and what the faculty is ready for is totally different based on those divisions. And sitting and listening and understanding and not overwhelming with your own excitement and enthusiasm for the program, because if you do too much too early, you could lose those people that you need the most, and lose the confidence of the school. So pacing yourself, but also take time to pause and reflect as a team on what you have accomplished, and instead of thinking about where you haven't gotten to yet. And so that's, I think, pacing is really important, and celebrating the victories.
All right. Number 3. So this one is almost everything will work again if you unplug it, and that's including yourself. Taking time for self-care. This has been a long year, and understanding that we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and there's a lot of stress and anxiety and fear that we're all still experiencing in one way or another. We've had so much loss in our community, as probably most of you have. Just understanding where you're meeting people, and understanding that sometimes you have to step back and then evaluate a new approach to come to them. And oftentimes that's worked for us. So maybe we were being a little too aggressive, or maybe we were just, trying to insert ourselves, too quickly. So understanding like, okay, this person is having a moment, and that we can be able to approach them in a different way so that they're comfortable, because nothing's going to work unless the teacher feels comfortable with you being involved with their work, and understanding that you're just bolstering their work, and taking the time to celebrate the work that they're already doing. So that would be the 3.
Our final point really has to do with students, and it's kind of both of us, and that is to sit and listen to students. Students should, if we want students to truly be the agents in this work and to find energy and enthusiasm, which I'm hearing from all of you, we have to listen to our students. And just like there have been teachers that have been passionate about this work before Greatest Good McDonough ever existed, there are students who have been involved in leadership positions here at our school and running clubs and organizations that care deeply about service, and feel as though, quite honestly, they haven't been heard, or that adults have often gotten in their way. So we've found that those lines of communication and using those students as our champion and investing tons of time into those kids has been really invaluable. And Maya, kudos to Maya, who's worked hand in hand with those students, and really from the beginning. This is the first time we've had SGA, Student Government Association representatives for service, for like 6 years, and no one has ever actually given them the guidance or energy in their role. They've just been lumped in with student government, and Maya took them on right away, saw that need, and it really has been a tremendous resource. They are a tremendous resource, and their energy and enthusiasm and commitment, and now we feel like they could be the foundation of an ambassadors program, and they would be at the forefront. So listen to your students. They have amazing ideas, and they care deeply about this.
Awesome. That's your 5th one, right?
That was 5. Yeah.
Cool. Great. That was really helpful. Look at what you can do in 26 minutes. That's awesome. Thank you everyone for all of those awesome tips. We will open it up to anyone, any of the 4 of you out there, or collaborative, you could ask someone else that may have a question. So if anyone has a question, I think you just unmute yourself and go for it. And I may ask one question about Thomas the Train, because I'm very interested.
And that's one of the questions I was going to ask Annie as well. Because Bridget and I have been looking into the UN Sustainable Goals as well. Have you had any pushback with publicly sharing that that is one of the, I guess, the inspiration behind some of the coursework that you're doing. I know that that can be a little controversial. So just wondering if you've had any pushback from publicly sharing that that's some, the root of some of your coursework.
Yeah, it's a great question. We've gotten pushback about a lot of things. This is actually not one of them, because I think what it speaks to and what we often say is there is no one who is doing all 17. And that's like not the goal, and it's not realistic. What is really exciting is that there's likely one or two or five that speak to every individual. And even some of our families or some of our community members that are in their early days of social impact work can see themselves in life below water. So often what we do is try to connect it to the things that matter to them. So if scuba diving or travel, spending time at the beach matters to you, then life below water is something that we can connect language to action. We have had bigger conversations, I think, around frameworks that are not US centric. So balancing the examples we share of entrepreneurship and social impact right here in our own community. We're trying to do a good job of saying, like, you don't have to go out and change the world. And my colleague has done incredible work around the heropreneur model. If you haven't seen that, that's a really good one. I think we've talked a lot about that today. And removing kind of the individual, like, I'm here saving the world, not the goal. No one, 4 and 5-year-olds especially, but even 14 and people my age, we don't need that pressure. We need to feel connected. And so the UN Sustainable Development Goals, I think, give people connection to language. The big question that we have, and actually I'm going to put in the link for anyone that's interested, and we'll give NNSP schools a discount. I didn't even think about this. We are deeply interested in assessment of social impact work. And so we're going to host a seminar this summer, mirroring some of the work that, if you're familiar with B corporations, we're trying to create, along with anyone that will join us, an assessment that maps kind of the B Corp to business for us in education. Because what we're facing is we have a block of time in our schedule for all grades, JK to 8th grade, and we're launching a high school next year called Reach Beyond Block, but it's not assessed. And it is the experience children are having within that space is very different depending on who is teaching it. And so we're going to use the Sustainable Development Goals as a core part of that assessment. And we're hosting something at the end of the year called an SDG-B. So instead of a spelling bee, like a Sustainable Development Goals B, to just drive some of the work forward. And I often refer to it as our equity literacy. So impact academics, equity literacy, really moving away from like, this is the fluff on the side and opt in when you want, or it's for the kids that care about the world, but the kids who are serious about math don't connect. Like, impact academics is the future of school. And I'm pretty outspoken about that in our community. And then I work really hard to make sure every child has a connection to one of the SDGs. We make them do that at the beginning of the year.
I can speak just a little bit to that as well, because we do use the SDGs for a lot of our frameworks for our service learning classes as well. And we have an 12th grade US history teacher who's actually using the SDGs for her final project for her students. And what has helped with that is we've taken our department database that sort of has all the information of the community partners that we work with, and then adding a column that has what are their key SDGs that they are focused on, so that students can use that database to search and figure out, like, if they've chosen this particular SDG for their core focus for this particular project, then they can do the work of looking through our nonprofit partners locally and connecting with them, because they have that connection information already there in the database. And then we work with them through, how do you write an email? How do you reach out to somebody? What do you actually want to say in a respectful and thoughtful way? And so that has really helped in terms of adding just that column to our database, which is used by students and adults on campus, to say like, this is really a framework for the work that we're doing.
Thank you both. Thank you.
And I think Steve put a couple questions in the chat about how people are feeling about the work you're doing. And if you feel optimistic, are you discouraged? Are you in the middle, or it depends on the day? So.
Oh, I'll go first. No, I mean, I am optimistic about the work. I would say that one of the best things is that our head of school and administration is very excited about this work, and the board of trustees. Right. So just having them speaking about it in a really enthusiastic way is terrific. That's a really positive. There is a disposition and a space in our school curriculum for this work, so that like it already exists. There's easy places to plug in. That's all really a positive, optimistic piece. I would say there have been discouraging days where we've realized the absolute fatigue and in many ways trauma that teachers have faced over the past 2 years. That has been discouraging because we're teachers. We're all there. We understand because, you know, it's easy to cast your mind back to pre-pandemic days and think about how ready and how much energy people had for this. And then, because that's when this kind of was begun at McDonough, but now it's being launched this year. And so that it's hard. There are moments when it's hard to deal with that because teachers are feeling so out of control of a lot of things here. And so if their passion project was this service project that they've been doing for so many years, and we're trying to deepen the understanding, celebrate it, but support, they see the support as us trying to take away something that they've had control over. And that's just one more thing: the schedule, the virtual, the masking, the whatever it might be. And so that's been discouraging, to be honest. However, I do feel like we have the foundation. So I am optimistic that teachers, we have the trust of teachers and they do care about us. And once we listen and give them space and assume best intent, that we can kind of get past that part.
Thank you.
Bridget, you have to be one of the most optimistic people we know, though. So we have to take your optimism with a little bit of grain of salt, because everybody's probably slightly less optimistic than Bridget is. I'm just a characteristic of Bridget is optimism and encouragement and all things positive. So
but there have been tears. I'm being honest. There have been tears.
No, I know, that's why
I shed tears and discouraged.
I was just trying to give you a compliment. And I don't know if that came off that way, but you are always so positive.
Yeah, well, I'm the realist out of the duo, and I agree. I agree. Yes. Just what you said. I mean, we've had our amazing days, and we've had some that, you know, haven't been so great. But I think we take time. You know, some of the books I've been reading, I say, instead of saying like, what's wrong with them, I say, what happened to them, right? And trying to figure out why they're showing up in this way. And that helps us to kind of meet them where they are, and figuring out like, this isn't us, this isn't against us, this is something that they're going through. So how can we help them through this? So I totally agree.
Yes, amen to that. And also, like, we also recognize that have the luxury of having a school that says this is important. Here are the resources to make this happen. And here we're speaking. Like, we're speaking about you. We're actually saying we care about this. This is who we are. This is our North Star. Like, I know that that's not true of all institutions because there's so many competing things for energy and vision and everything else. So if you can get there as an institution, everything else will fall into place. I really believe it, because when you're speaking to teachers, this is who we are. I mean, this is our outcomes are what every teacher wants from their students. It's a matter of whether or not they can see themselves on these pathways and on this journey in this way, because they often see themselves in different lights because of the way we've been raised as teachers, so to speak, and our own understanding of the work.
That's awesome. Thank you both. Any other questions for anyone on this Zoom? You don't have to have one, but if you do, throw it out there.
Annie talked about this, but maybe, and this isn't about this isn't your 5 things, but how acutely important it is to make sure your DEI, DEI, whatever, in all of Annie's initials, justice in action. How are other schools making sure that they are explicitly doing this and making sure we're not just checking a box and also not sending kids out and doubling down on stereotypes or doing harm or misrepresenting our intentions, etc. It's a large, loaded question. I'm not expecting it to be perfect or short, but it's really what's at the forefront of all the schools that I talk to about how they can improve their work. I think this is one of the most important components. So I'd love to have some ideas from you all of just simple ways that you have started to pick away at this issue.
I think that, Blake, I think that's a really important question. And I think it's on the forefront of a lot of our minds. For one of the ways is for us at Westminster is just meeting as often as we can. And even if it's just like in the hallway, just catching each other up in between our Glenn team and the DEI team and saying, you know, I was in this meeting, this came up, someone has this idea, like, how can we really work together and build off each other and use some of the common language when we're working with our students and our faculty and our staff, but also how are we preparing our students when they're walking out of the gates of our campus and interacting with our neighbors, and whether it's our neighbors down the street or it's our neighbors in our country or it's our neighbors globally. How do we prepare our students to really be open and honest and do that their own identity work first? And then how do you reflect post experiences? And we're not perfect. We don't have the answers by any means, but it is something that we are really focusing on and trying to get better at and build into more, if not all of our curriculum. And one just quick example of what we've done is we actually used to have a service corps, which was a student leadership group in the upper school, and we had an SDLC DEI focused student group in the upper school, and last year merged them together to have the Social Change Leadership Council, and brought students together in that programming to think about what does social change mean on our campus, off our campus, in our world, and what are ways that we can have impact and how can we create social change. And that's where those idea groups came from, those indirect, direct education and advocacy groups, and breaking the Social Change Leadership Council down into those 4 groups based on what they were most interested in.
I'm super curious, and I wish someone would write a book about this, any of you that have negative time, around the relationship of student government and DEI, JA work. We've had a fun and interesting tension about that this year, because democratizing who sees themselves as leaders is, I think, the work of social impact. And yet when you have structures and systems in place for a subset of students to hold that space, I'm interested in like the impact of what that does to the other group of individuals that don't see the paths to leadership as clear. And like, what would happen if you actually just remove that structure and system and said, we're all leaders, and our role as educators is to help each individual child find their path to leadership. That might look different for every kid. You know, I've seen really, like, the Island School has done interesting work around like every student plays a leadership role in their morning circle. So you take 3-week cycles. That was interesting to me, so that it's not just the kids that raise their hand or promise ice cream or vending machines on campus that get elected. Can you tell that I might be a little cynical about the state of student government? Because it's an important one, and I get the role that it plays, and the short-term impact of it is often amazing. Students running flags, students doing really cool leadership roles. What I'm more concerned about is the long-term impact and who is left out of that space. So we tell really good stories about the kids that are in that space. What we don't talk about are the kids that are outside of that space and have like a brick wall up against what they see as student leadership.
I like that. I'm just going to say one thing that's quick and answers what Blake was saying earlier too. Like, how do you prepare kids before they go out in communities and how to do that? We're trying a new thing that we've been doing the last 6 months. And it's after a book called The Art of Noticing, which I'm a huge fan of, where we're running noticing field trips. And so we're building these moments into our day where we are sometimes putting them on a bus, sometimes having us meet there, sometimes making it part of class, and sometimes doing it on our campus. But what we're trying to get them to do is just be in spaces as opposed to helping in spaces, and actually give like prompts. The book's awesome, by the way. I use it in my daily life now. I can't stop noticing everything, which is kind of cool and builds empathy. But we're doing this with kids. So like in typical neighborhoods where we would have gone in and blown in, done some tutoring and blown out, we're actually just building like an hour-long thing where we're noticing in the neighborhood. So like, or noticing at the nonprofit, like noticing, they never email me back. I've never seen that woman ever at her desk, right? Like our kids being like, I can't get a response. But then we notice in the nonprofit that it's like, oh, they're never actually at their desk ever, because there's so much, like, so like for me, it's building massive amounts of understanding and empathy in the simplest way, just by taking them to places, even on our own campus, and having them notice what's going on and then do reflection of it. So I'm just sharing that because it's been massively helpful. And we do it as little as the little people, pre-K all the way to 12th grade. We're noticing everywhere. It's like my new thing that I'm hyped about. But I think it works. And I think it really works if you're really intentional about it. So that's just kind of a trick and an easy activity to do that gets it what you want to get out without saying, now remember, and this, like they notice it and they name it, which I think is super helpful.
Laura,
the link.
Laura, I don't know if I can be heard. Okay. Yes. So do you give them prompts to look at? Because I can imagine, yes, okay. Because I can imagine going to our local urban ministries and kids would notice all kinds of things, but not that the person that they wanted to talk to was too busy to talk to them.
A lot of the ones that I like to do are hopeful and happy. Like, where do you see joy in this neighborhood? Where do you find, like all these asset-based things. And so you're really giving them freedom, but really honing in to make sure that they're actually kind of seeing neighborhoods and spaces in ways that are different than how I know our students go into spaces and are quick to judge, right? Because it's different than the world they're coming from, which is like intense. And so it's really worked well, and the prompts are good, and the book is awesome, and it gives like 161 options. And so we've just turned a lot of that into curriculum, which has been really fun. And thank you, Blake, for the link.
Yeah, sorry for the 17-line link. I don't know what happened. That reminds me of the story of the girls who went to, Spence had a partnership with the Promise Academy, which is a charter school in the Harlem Children's Network. And the woman that was running the program, Danielle Pasno, was telling a story about how they were trying to make sure that one of their outcomes is they wanted the girls from the two different schools to have play dates. They thought that that was a trackable way to see if relationships were formed between the two groups of kids. And they, so it didn't happen the first year. So they thought, well, obviously the parents have to get to know each other if they're going to have a play date, et cetera. So she put all of the Spence parents in, had a mandatory first pre-meeting with all the parents and put them on a bus and send them to Harlem Children's Zone, and how deathly quiet and silent and nervous. And you could just feel it in the bus of these kids, these parents that were driving to Harlem Children's Zone. And the school, Promise Academy, is surrounded on all sides by Section 8 housing and all this stuff. And she said, but meanwhile, you put kids on that bus and they're yammering and talking the whole time. They don't notice any of the stuff except that they're going to a school, they're going to see their friends, the school looks just like their school on the inside, et cetera. So anyway, just made me think about noticing and what kids notice and don't notice, and how you can highlight assets. I like that asset based. I'm rambling. Annie, I'm all for your question about student leadership in DEIJA, and I don't know what the right answer is, but it's an interesting question. And I think there's so much, even just about the work we're talking about leadership in general and how we identify those leaders. And is it always the leaders that are the ones who are moving an idea forward loudly? Or are there quiet leaders behind? And we know the answer. It's just, how do we make sure we're honoring both kinds of leaders? And I don't mean to say that it's only two kinds of leaders, but you understand all the various types of leaders that we see at school. And how do we honor that? And how do we break the system of, this is another thing of independent schools of like, it's just how we've always done it, right? We always have student government, and student government runs morning meeting, and they bring the flag out and they raise it up, and but like, how do we change that vision?
Who's to say that wouldn't be our next webinar possibly? So
Do it.
I think that might be interesting. But we'll wrap up now just for the sake of the time, and really appreciate everyone's comments and thoughts. I feel like this was a really awesome conversation. And those of you who watch the recording later, you get a lot of nuggets of wisdom from these awesome people who've joined us today. And I would also say we have a bunch of summer stuff coming up that Blake has sent you an email if you're on and she'll send it back out probably again to all of you who are here with us. But we have a bunch of really cool student programs partnering with Close Up and Stanford, and then also general professional development, which most of you have already done or been to, but one of the ones we're going to talk about is social impact into curriculum, right? And that's similar to what Annie was talking about. And how do you build it into your day as opposed to the historical nights and weekends? So thank you for being here. And anything
Thank
else,
you,
Blake,
everybody.
just thank you. Okay.
Thank you
How
all.
about
Thank you.
5 April, everyone? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for having
Thanks,
me.
everyone.
Bye.